All right, thanks, Charlie, and thanks for organising this. I think it's a really good initiative. It really is very, very impressive. Get it on your CV. Especially if you're participating as well, you can put on your CV for differentiation, you can put things like this, even though you're not running it, if you're taking part in it, you can show that you're trying to improve and develop your skills. So who am I? Well, I'm a mix between an academic and somebody from the business world. And I came into academia later and did all the qualifications, doctor, etc. Later on, when my son was growing up. But I'm from business and I've kept business going all those years, consultancy, and mainly operate in the areas of leadership and change. So looking at strategy, what do we need to do to look to the future? What do we need to do to change? And in my work with students, because mostly I do undergrad and postgrad students at different universities. Previously, I've run for 10 years MBAs at the local university, worked with research supervision at the University of Manchester. And prior to that, I was actually running from Edinburgh to London, Reed accountancy offices. I don't know if you know recruitment at all, but it's a large, very large recruitment firm. And so one of the things that has always occurred to me is how important it is for us to be there for young people going into their careers, and for leaders, particularly leaders my age nowadays and older, to understand what they need to do to, if you like, regroup and understand how new thinking, creativity and innovation works now. So what I do, I focus a lot of my research and all of my publications have not only been on leadership, but they've been on the future. What do you, at the age from 16 through 20, need to be thinking about to develop your career? What do you do when you're going into university? Be thinking about what to do to make sure you go in, get the skills in the right areas. What do you do when you've got your degree? What do you think about? And these are the things that intrigue me. Having brought people on over the years, having led people, it's really important that we're always up for change. That's not as easy as it sounds. So, you know, again, if you look at different generations, if you even look at your peer group, are they up for change in the way they should be? So what I'm going to do with this period of time is I'm going to look at several aspects that I think you need to think about in terms of your need to get skills in certain areas, and some of them will be easy because you're naturally inclined to to be native to technology, but there are other sort of skills and things to think about in the future, so you future-proof yourself and your career. You're thinking not just next year and applying for university, but you're thinking about what you need to do beyond that and what you, the future leader, is going to look like. And you're going to have to be leading people my age. You're going to have to be leading people your own age. You're going to have to be thinking about those things. So let's look at the different things that will affect that. And let's look first at technology, because that's the most interesting part, the way things are changing. Imagine yourself 25 years from now, holding your device as you would do. Now imagine that it's one of those Nokia things that your parents used to use. And what's going to happen is one day, the next generation, the human beings that you grow, they're going to look at your devices now, your MacBooks, etc., whatever it is, and they're going to look back the way that you look at the things that your parents have used in the past. And if you even look back further than that, when we all used to use those great big brick mobile telephones, I mean, it's hilarious. But that's the way technology is going to look in the next 20-something years. And this is what we need to think about. These devices that we're using now are already clunky. With the new technologies coming up and through, your workplace is going to change drastically. And that was already headed before COVID. So COVID has speeded things up. It's catalysed remote working, it's catalysed remote everything, which is fantastic. But already happening were certain types of technology that were starting to look at changing the workplace. Oh, what kinds of technology? Well, you know, things like, I've got a list here: drones, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, driverless cars, and that's before we even look at social media. So if you look at how they're going to affect your workplace, that's going to be quite radical. You're going to have a workplace completely changed, for instance, by AR. Augmented reality will change the way we travel. We'll be able to see the data through the glasses. We'll be able to see train times. We'll be able to see hotel rooms. We'll look at a building. We'll see vacant rooms. Never mind Trivago anymore. It will be, you know, Trivago in 3D through glasses, and we'll be able to click on things and book them in the air. Similarly, so we won't just have to bring up TomToms, etc. in the car, or look at Google Maps. They'll all be available, and that will make working very, very different. Now that changes the way you're going to lead people, because these devices have worked very differently and almost like blocked, and we've almost become quite insular with a QWERTY keyboard. Now we're going to be doing it slightly differently. So you're going to have to think about how things like augmented reality will change the way in which you do everything. And it is very, very exciting. You know, it can bring worlds, you know, to the workplace. We can talk to different people in different places in a much better way than even this. This is all 2D. It's lovely, and it's great to have the facility, but it's not like a proper sort of image of somebody, which the technology is already there for. Then add things like driverless cars. That will change even the imprint of a town or a city. In your working lifetime ahead, beyond your degree, your leadership, you know, sort of, if you like, presence is going to be through different media. It might be like this for a little while, and then it will transport into more 3D AR imaging. But equally, how people get to you, how people travel, and what they do, it's going to change. So driverless cars will be there, and it will be a case of maybe grid systems in cities. Maybe Uber will actually, you know, you will get an Uber to get a central Uber, and there'll be you know, there'll be a different way of doing everything, including traveling to work. And you'll have to think this through as you think about your future staff control. How are you going to motivate them, excite them, make work sexy when this is all you have? Or when there's, if you like, then you're having to talk to an image and it seems quite strange. So when we sit and think of our future self, we need to think how we skill up, not just in academic terms, because yes, that's important, but also in the different social technological terms that we need to be thinking where the world is going and predict it. And most good development is not just about getting a piece of paper. That's important, get that baseline. It's about building on and thinking, will my business even exist? What do I want to do? What are the things that technology is going to affect most over the next number of years? A very good place to look is the World Economic Forum. And, you know, that's so easy. You can look up, it's just, I have it fed through on my LinkedIn profile. And the World Economic Forum always has lovely little short video snippets of lots of different things going on, whether it's robots in Japan, or anything like that, to show how different accessibility and different jobs are changing. And when you look ahead, you can look at things like World Economic Forum, and you can see that they're advising that the skills you need for the future are going to be what we, for want of a better term, call the softer skills, the things that machines can't do. So if there is a repetitive job, just presume a machine will be doing it in the next 10 years. Even things like accountancy are going to change drastically, where, if you like, spreadsheets will be much more 3D, they'll be more interactive. That will change dramatically. So even those things are going to change. And that the case, how are you going to adapt, and what skills do you need to acquire to be ahead of everybody else? And the World Economic Forum will advise it's things like creativity, innovation, it's personal skills, it's empathy, It's knowing how to be there for other people. And you can see the logic of this, can't you? Because if a robot can do your job in 10 years' time, then you need to be able to work alongside that, but you equally need to be better than that. And there's lots of different things that technology is changing in terms of accessibility as well. There's a lovely story in Japan about this cafe you walk into, and it's all the services by robots. In Japan, they've got like places that are run by robots, everything, hotels, etc. But this cafe is a little bit different. And the robot comes up to you, and it obviously takes your order, and it serves you your tea, coffee, etc., whatever it is that you've done. But it's not really a robot. The clip shows you, it pans out, and there's a quadriplegic lying in a flat in Japan, able only to do things with his mouth. And he is able to be a productive member of society because technology allows him to speak through the robot and have social interaction with people at that cafe. I mean, I confess I nearly had a little boohoo tear at that one, because, you know, it really is wonderful what technology can do. And if you imagine it can give accessibility like that, you're preparing yourself with skills to be much more inclusive. You are already the most inclusive generation thus far, and brilliant. Our generation can learn a lot from yours. Those of us that have had a passion for equality for a very long time, and this is not just about women's rights or anything, this is about, you know, I believe everybody's minute is as important as anybody else's, no matter what age you are. We all have 168 hours in a week. You know, none of us have any more, and why would we think our hour is any better than anyone else's? But technology and your generation combined, brilliant, because that mix is such a wonderful combination of your mentality towards equality, but equally using the technology to bring it about. And you'll be the inclusive, diverse leaders of the future. You will be able to think ahead, and that's why it's important to embrace the technology, which your generation is very natural at. But you've now got to then think of your future self helping other people do the same. And your workplace is now going into what I call a larger intergenerational spectrum. So you will have, as leaders in the future, once you've got your qualifications and you're in there, you will have people your own age, you'll have Generation Z, you'll have Generation X and Y, and you'll still possibly have the odd boomer. Okay, now I know that nowadays boomer is a derogatory term, isn't it? On things like TikTok, it's like boomer comes up and it's, but actually people are working longer, and technology hasn't affected just the, if you like, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, driverless cars. Technology also keeps people living longer and doing more. So retirement ages are getting older and older. So your parents' retirement age, officially for state, is now late 60s. When you get to that age, it's going to be 70s and possibly early 70s. Now, that the case, you, the young leader going in, have got an older generation to look after who are not going to be quite so technically able as yourself. Some will be very good, but some will be absolutely terrified of it. So you're going to have to accommodate by some kind of team-based mixed reality approach that you will have to think about getting productivity and motivating people in the right way. And that's quite difficult to cross generations. And you must have seen that from if you've worked in any kind of, you know, different discipline. And you might have seen, for instance, that perhaps certain older leaders don't understand the way you think. You know, but you have to then start to understand the way they think. So technology has an impact on everyone, but in different ways. And your, if you like, upskilling will be to understand the different generations and how they think. And the best way I feel I can describe it is if you think how we learned at school. So I'm sort of boomer stroke Generation X, prefer Generation X if you don't mind, but essentially we would have learned in a fairly linear 2D kind of way. That's not better or lesser than the way you think. That's just a different way of thinking. It's the way in which we were schooled. And that means things like technology, and I am very techie actually, but even some of the things I might do, like text, would be funny to you. So you'd watch me text and it would be hilarious. But essentially, it's the way in which our brains have come this far. Doesn't mean it's better or less. Your brains are much more coming through with Generation Y and now Generation Z. They're much more three-dimensional. So you're able to think multi-platform from the different social media things you've used, etc. And this is really useful for you. But don't rule out the 2D linear, because that's another good way of thinking as well. And I actually work really well with young people, because we think in different ways. So we look at different perspectives, and actually it's a very, very good marriage. But you need to understand how people don't think the way you do. So if platforms and levels and, 3/4D like this is very familiar to you, you want to sit back and think, well, if someone doesn't quite think like that and they're more logical, then maybe we need to, to look at the way in which we lead them and make that slightly different. Yeah. So, again, it's about sitting back. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to all leaders of all different ages, and I've done a lot of leadership consultancy, is sit back and try to be more empathic and understand, yes, the technology, yes, the future ahead, yes, the financial and, anything statistical, the science is important, but equally, what about the art? The art of being able to understand other people by sitting back and not thinking that they are lesser. They're different. It's okay to be different. And if they don't understand something the way you do, then it's important to, maybe educate yourself to think like that. So talk to parents more, talk to older generations more, and look at the way in which they see things. There's a lovely little lovable thing, from my family, in that Facebook, I know, is sort of antique now to your generation, and it's all TikTok and everything over the summer. But when my dad, who is 81 now, went onto Facebook, he used to post messages to everybody on his own wall. Happy birthday, it's so cute, isn't it? It's lovely. But what he didn't understand, and he's a generation above me, his way of education, his way of thinking was that if you put it there, it would sort it out for you. He didn't understand the different levels and platforms that we all take for granted. And if you think about that, it's not because he's lacking any intellect, it's simply a lack of familiarity with something we see as natural. And so we have to think about how that works for us. How are we doing for time, Charlie? Are we doing all right? We got another?
Yeah, we've got a few more minutes and then we've got some questions, if that's okay.
Good, okay. I've just got a few more points then I'd like to make, and I'd like to touch on things like social media. And that's another thing if you're preparing yourself for leadership in the future. Understanding how people benefit from, I think it's an absolutely fantastic thing, in terms of bringing people together and keeping friendships, etc. going, looking at trends, but it affects culture in a really good way. But equally, there are some things that we need to be thinking about that perhaps happen with social media if we're not careful. And that's something worth looking up called echo chambers, filter bubbles. And when you're thinking about future leadership progress, you need to think about this in certain ways anyway. So you would be thinking about, for instance, if we are on, like on Facebook or Instagram, etc., the algorithms work for us and only bring certain people back. Google's 57 algorithms control what, they've spied on what devices we've used, etc., and they make assumptions on what we are going to see. Which is why if we want to book a holiday, not that we are at the moment, but why if we want to book a holiday, it's quite useful to go in on another email or on another device to get a cheaper deal, because Google's already familiarised itself with what you usually get and you're not necessarily always getting the best. So we have to be aware in terms of being a leader for the future, not just the lovely benefits of thinking about where technology takes us and how things are changing, but equally any kind of negativity, any things that might start restricting people's political viewpoints, making them feel a little bit insular. Do our echo chambers get smaller and smaller as we only talk to people who agree with us, if you see what I mean? my view is read things that you don't agree with. Go out, get newspapers you wouldn't normally get, i.e., you don't have to subscribe for everything, but pick up the odd physical one so you don't have to subscribe, and look at the different ways in which people treat news, and look at the different opinions, so that you see how everybody thinks, not just how people who want to say yes to you think. Because as a leader, you don't want to be surrounded by yes people. You want to know what's going on in the business. And then have we got just a minute left, Charlie? Are we okay? Yeah. So, and then what you want to think about too is how things will become disrupted. So as you've gone through and you've looked at your various disciplines to be studying, you've thought about the impact of technology on it. Think about the disruptors that have already happened. The Netflixes, the Ubers, etc., Airbnbs, they've all been really exciting disruptors. Think very carefully now ahead about how the area in which you want to go to could be disrupted. You might even be the next famous disruptor, because it will be the fine young mind that will think of things in a way perhaps that the established ones won't. So when you're looking at that, always be predictive. Look at the technology, how it might affect your business, look at the disruptions possible, but then equally look at the softer skills, the things that the robots can't do, and start understanding the generations, the demographics, and understanding your span of control. Your workplace will cover more generations than before. So there might be 4 generations in that workplace to deal with. So should we leave it there, Charlie? I think, we might be running out of time. I can talk for more if you like.
No, that's brilliant. Such an insightful talk. I'm trying to take it all in. We've just got a few questions. I know you've covered so much. What would be your 3 top tips for a future leader, just to sum that up?
Okay, so the first thing is prediction. Sit and think about how things might go ahead. So when you're looking at statistics, finances, and looking at business at the moment, that's already gone old-fashioned. Forget it. All right, so now think about how it's going to pan out over the next 5-10 years hence. And that's where you might be able to look at things like World Economic Forum, look at what the Jeff Bezos, etc. did, initially. Elon Musk, obviously, he's doing very exciting things. Look at these different leaders that are going into dangerous new territory, and think about your own areas. So certainly predicting, being technologically ahead of the game, and thinking where particularly AR is going for jobs, I would say, because drones, etc., will naturally do different things, but AR will make a big difference to leadership. And then the holistic side, the third thing, be empathic. Really understand, even if that person is completely different culturally to you, or is disabled, or whatever, everybody is equal. Your generation is better at it than any, but it's really important that you're not scared of talking to somebody who's 70, or who has, an issue, autism or anything like that. And you need to understand them. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I know you've mentioned a few there. Is there any sort of websites or any accounts that you recommend that people could look at if they want to learn more? I know you mentioned the Economic Forum.
The World Economic Forum is a good place to it's short, sharp, and it's got those little videos that just make you want to go into something else. There are many leadership books. To be quite honest, I could give you a massive, including my own, I could actually give you a massive list. What I would say initially at your age, because you've got enough to think about going to university, is to look at leadership in general, and look up things like The Economist, Forbes, different things like that if you're going into business. And then obviously if it's arts or anything, you look at things that are pertinent to that. But in general business, keep an eye on the things that come through. And the one thing I would say to your age group is start getting your LinkedIn profile up. So rather than search many websites, start being proactive with yourself, and you are your own website. And so what then happens is you accrue. So even at late teens, what happens then is you get a contact. So if you were to join with myself, my 1700 contacts are there. I can introduce you if that's what you would like, and you know, who knows, there may be of some use to you. Then as you get into your 20s, it becomes more and more useful because you can start putting proper opinions. Now the way you're using it for this is brilliant. You know, you're putting your talks on, etc., and you're getting known. But your own personal profile and anybody following you can actually show the participation in something like this, but then you're building that experience over time. So even if you are just watching a lot of the feed for a bit, it gets you into that familiarity. So I would say those are the things I would do rather than go to read certain things. If you wanted to read on leadership, there's so many, you will be spoiled for choice. Yeah, loads.
Brilliant. You mentioned soft skills and you've covered some on this. How do you think is the best way for young people to sort of present these in applications or on a CV?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So what you want to do is put phrases in that actually psychologically manipulate the reader. So you would want to, like, for instance, if you said you were doing some holiday work at a restaurant or something like that, don't just put serving food or behind a bar, etc. Put in phrases like which gave me the experience to deal with all age groups or all different kinds of people. And then the key thing to do is to make sure that you do. If you're at a party or you're at a family gathering, go and talk to the different age groups, and particularly the oldies. Don't just stay. One of the things we used to do in recruitment, we'd watch people when we're on assessment centres or we were recruiting them. We'd watch to see how social they were, and we would watch to see whether they would kind of be in the corner with just their mates, or whether they would get, you know, work the room, as it's called. And working the room works two ways. You get lots of information, but you also get an understanding of people so that you're able to talk to just about anyone. So if there's one skill I would think about in terms of softer skills, that's a work the room, talking to people, be interested, and you'll be surprised what the different generations can offer. Seems weird at first, but that will help you be more empathic.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. I just want to take the time to sort of thank you for giving up your time to talk to us. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, if you've got any other questions, you can submit them on our website and we can be sure to get some answers for you. So thank you for giving up your time. It's been such an insightful talk. I really appreciate it. Really
good thing to do, Charlie. It really is. And if anybody does want help with personal statements, CVs, etc., just shout.
Brilliant. And I'm sure to have some details for you on the website. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching.
Thanks a lot. Take care.